Rebecca threw her wedding ring at me during Sunday service prep, laughing, then froze when my lawyer walked in, holding church bylaws. That's how 15 years of marriage ended. Not with tears, not with apologies, with a piece of brushed gold bouncing across my desk, and a woman I thought I knew becoming a stranger in under 3 minutes. My name is Daniel Matthews. I'm the senior pastor of Grace Community Church in Riverside, California. 3,200 members, 65 staff, 15 years building something I thought honored God and served people. I preach about covenant faithfulness, about staying when it's hard, about marriage as a reflection of Christ's love for the church. I had no idea my wife was texting her lover during my sermons. That Sunday morning in late September started like any other. I stood behind the pulpit in our main sanctuary, holding my grandfather's Bible. The leather was worn smooth as river stone from 60 years of preaching. When I opened it, the cover creaked. You could hear decades of faith in that sound. The pages were tissue thin, whispering when I turned them. It still smelled faintly of anointing oil from his hands. "We stand before God and witnesses," I told the congregation. 3,500 people that morning, packed into every seat. That's what we say at weddings. It's not just poetry, it's accountability. Marriage is a covenant made public because love needs witnesses when it gets hard. The worship team sat behind me on stage. Kyle Foster, our worship director, had just finished the opening set. His voice still echoed in the sanctuary from the final song, something from the album we'd released at Easter. His Grace Sufficient, we'd called it. Rebecca had co-produced it with Kyle. 6 months of late-night recording sessions. I should have noticed then. In the front row, Rebecca sat with her phone in her lap, thumb moving. I remember thinking she was taking notes. She did that sometimes during my sermons, posted quotes on the church's social media, engaged the congregation digitally. She wasn't taking notes. "Covenant means staying when it's hard," I said, gripping the pulpit. "It means choosing faithfulness when feelings fade. It means—" My phone buzzed in my pocket, unusual during service. I ignored it, finished the sermon, gave the altar call, prayed over 3 people who came forward, shook hands, smiled, pastored. As the crowd filtered out, David Chen, our associate pastor, caught my arm in the hallway backstage. "Daniel," he said quietly, "we need to talk, soon." His face told me it was serious, but I had a meeting with Jennifer Park, our church attorney, in 10 minutes. Bylaws update. Boring, but necessary. "After lunch," I offered. David nodded, but something flickered in his eyes. Pity maybe, or fear. I walked toward my office through the backstage corridor, past framed photos of church history. 15 years of growth documented in glossy prints, baptisms, building dedications, the Harrison Cardiac Wing, no, wrong church, the Children's Wing dedication, mission trips to Guatemala. Then I heard her voice around the corner, Rebecca, on the phone. "I can't keep doing this, Kyle." Her voice was low, urgent. "He'll find out eventually. We have to—" I stopped walking. My heart stopped with me. "No, I know you love me, but we can't, not here, not now." Silence. Then a laugh, soft, intimate, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in years. "Tonight then, after the evening service, same place." I pushed open my office door. She was sitting in my chair, phone still at her ear. When she saw me, she didn't startle, didn't hang up quickly, just said, "I'll call you back," and set the phone down on my desk like we were about to discuss budgets. "How long, Rebecca?" 4 words. That's all it took to end a marriage. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Relief. "Long enough," she said, "long enough to remember what passion feels like. What it's like to be seen as a woman, not just the pastor's wife." "How long?" 18 months. She said it like she was proud. "Since the worship album recording, since that week in the studio when we pulled the all-nighter mixing track 7. 18 months, a year and a half of Sundays. Of mission trips where I thought she was covering women's ministry while I was in Guatemala. Of late nights when I thought she was serving God and she was—" "Who?" I asked, even though I knew. She laughed, not nervous, not apologetic, bitter and free. "You really don't see anything, do you, Daniel? Kyle. It's Kyle. It's been Kyle since the bridge collapsed." The bridge collapse. May 3rd, 2023. 14 casualties. multi-car pileup. Half our church was in the emergency response. Rebecca had coordinated grief counseling. Kyle had led worship at the memorial service. We were in the sanctuary at 2 a.m, she said, standing now, moving toward the window, writing songs for the families, praying, and then we were just together, finally together. You had an affair in our church? Don't make it sound dirty. We fell in love, Daniel, real love, the kind you stopped giving me when you married this building instead of me. The anger should have come then, the rage, but all I felt was cold. I want a divorce, she said, turning back to me. I want out. Kyle and I are... She paused, smiled. We're going to be a family. What does that mean? I'm pregnant, Daniel. 12 weeks. It's his. We took a test last month. We're getting married. The room tilted. 12 weeks, 3 months. She'd been sitting in church, leading women's Bible studies, pregnant with another man's child, and I'd been preaching about covenant faithfulness like a fool. So, you can add child support to whatever calculations you're making, she continued, voice hardening. Kyle and I are leaving, together. We'll probably move to Oregon, start fresh. He's already got interest from churches up there. I looked at her. This woman I'd married 20 years ago in a small chapel in San Diego, who'd stood beside me when the church was 12 families in our living room, who'd held my hand when my father's scandal almost destroyed my calling. And I didn't recognize her. You're just going to walk away? I asked. From everything? From Hannah? At our daughter's name, something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe, or guilt. Hannah will understand, she said, but her voice wavered. She's almost 15, old enough to what? To understand that her mother chose adultery over her family? Don't you dare! She stepped toward me, finger pointing. You chose this church over us years ago. I'm just doing what you did, finding someone who actually sees me. The ring was still on her finger. Simple gold band with brushed finish. Worn thin from 16 years. I could see the inscription if you looked close enough. Proverbs 31:10 in delicate script. Who can find a virtuous woman? She followed my gaze, looked down at her hand, then yanked the ring off with sudden violence. Here, she said, and threw it. The ring made a soft clink when it hit my desk. Not the sharp ping of a diamond, just a whisper of gold on wood. It bounced twice and rolled toward the edge. I'm done pretending, she said. That's when Jennifer Park walked in, our church attorney. 45, sharp as a blade, carrying a leather folder of bylaws we were supposed to review. She took in the scene in half a second. Rebecca standing by the window, me behind the desk, the ring still rolling. Jennifer moved smoothly across the room and picked up the ring before it fell, held it up to the light from the window, reading the inscription. Proverbs 31:10, Jennifer said quietly. Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. She looked at Rebecca. I'll need this for asset documentation. Rebecca's face went white. You can't. This is private. This is between. Nothing involving church staff misconduct is private, Rebecca. Jennifer's voice was ice, especially when it involves the senior pastor's spouse and an employee. We have policies. She opened her leather folder, placed the ring inside a small manila envelope, and sealed it. Daniel, Jennifer said, turning to me, I think we need to discuss something other than bylaws today. Rebecca grabbed her purse from the chair. This is insane. You can't just... I can, Jennifer said. And I will. California is a no-fault divorce state, but this church has moral conduct clauses in every employment contract, including Kyle's. If you want to walk away quietly, I suggest you sit down and let's have an honest conversation about what comes next. Rebecca looked at me. I don't know what she saw in my face. Maybe shock, maybe grief, maybe just the end. Fine, she said, sitting. Let's talk. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad, clicked her pen, started asking questions in that calm, methodical way attorneys do. How long? How many times? Where? When? The security footage became relevant quickly. Wait, I said. Security footage? Jennifer nodded. Building security flagged a pattern last month. Tuesday and Thursday nights, your car and Kyle's truck in the lot simultaneously. Late, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. 8 months of records. She pulled out a printed spreadsheet. White printer paper, fresh from the machine, still warm. Rows and rows of timestamps in courier font. Rebecca's arrival time. Kyle's arrival time. Both vehicles. Overlapping. I counted as she handed me the pages. 67 nights. 67 times while I was on mission trips, or at late board meetings or in hospital rooms with dying members. They were here, in my church. In the building we dedicated to God's glory. I was building wells in Guatemala, I said, hearing my voice from far away. Clean water for villages without access? And you were— Don't, Rebecca said. Don't make yourself the martyr here. Jennifer kept writing, kept documenting. The evidence piled up in neat rows on her legal pad. That night, after Rebecca left, stormed out really, when Jennifer started asking about the pregnancy timeline and whether Kyle's recent promotions had been merit-based or conflict of interest, I sat alone in my office. The timestamp sheet sat on my desk. 67 nights. I ran my finger down the dates. May 3rd, 2023. The bridge collapse. That was night 1. Then sporadic through summer. Then regular. Tuesdays and Thursdays, like clockwork. The pattern was almost beautiful in its precision. Almost professional. I should have been praying. Should have been on my knees asking God for wisdom. Instead, I just stared at the numbers and felt nothing. A knock on the door. Soft. Dad? Hannah, my 14-year-old daughter, stood in the doorway holding her charcoal sketch pad. The black spiral-bound one she carried everywhere. Her art therapy, she called it. Processing the world through drawing. Can I come in? I nodded, closing the timestamp sheet, hiding the evidence, protecting her. She sat in the chair across from me, the chair Rebecca had sat in hours before, and placed the sketch pad on the desk. I need to show you something, she said. I should have shown you months ago. She opened the cover, thick textured pages filled with charcoal drawings. The spiral binding scraped as she flipped through. The charcoal had that dusty art class smell. Each page was dated in the corner. March 15th. A sketch of the sanctuary from the balcony view. Mom and Kyle on stage, standing close. Too close. April the 2nd. The church parking lot at night. 2 cars. Hers. His. April 30th. Mom laughing. Kyle's hand on her shoulder. Youth group cookout in the background. She turned page after page. 15 drawings total. A timeline documented in smudged black and gray. I tried to tell you, Hannah said quietly. I drew this one. She pointed to the April 30th sketch and showed it to Mom, asked if it was good. She looked at it and said, "That's nice, honey." Like she didn't even see what I'd captured. My throat closed. I was giving her a chance to stop, Hannah continued. To choose us. I thought if she knew I noticed, she'd— Her voice cracked. The final drawing was on the last page. Our wedding photo, the one that hung in our living room, recreated in charcoal. But Hannah had drawn a jagged line down the middle, shattered, split. The date at the bottom. 3 months ago. Was any of it real? She asked, looking up at me with eyes too old for 14. Their marriage, our family? Did she ever actually love us? I stood up, walked around the desk, pulled her into my arms. She loved her version of us, I said, my own voice breaking. But you and me? This is real. This survives. We stood there in that office, surrounded by theology books and ministry awards and photos of a life that was already gone, and cried together. Outside the window, the church campus spread out in the late afternoon light. 45 acres of buildings and playgrounds and parking lots. 3,200 members who trusted me to shepherd them. And I couldn't even shepherd my own family. Hannah pulled back, wiping her eyes. What happens now? I don't know, I admitted. But we'll figure it out. Together. She nodded, picked up her sketch pad, turned to leave. Hannah? She paused at the door. Thank you, I said, for trying to warn me, for seeing what I didn't. You were building wells for people without clean water, Dad. You were doing important things. The shepherd's first flock is his family, I said, remembering my own father's words, the father who'd failed at this exact thing. I forgot that. She gave me a sad smile and left. I looked down at the sketch pad she'd left open on my desk. The shattered wedding photo stared back at me. Hannah had known for months. My daughter had been carrying this weight, trying to diagnose our family's illness like a clinical case study, and I'd been too blind to see her silent plea. The question that would haunt me for the next 13 weeks began forming then. Can I hold my family, my faith, and my congregation together while exposing the truth? Before Christmas services, when 6,000 people in live broadcast expect me to preach about hope, I picked up my phone, texted Marcus Webb, the Elder Board chairman. Emergency meeting, tomorrow morning, need to discuss staff situation. His response came immediately. I'll call the board, 7 a.m. I set the phone down, looked at my grandfather's Bible still sitting on the desk where I had left it after the sermon, the worn leather, the thin pages, the red ribbon bookmark. We stand before God and witnesses. Tomorrow, those witnesses would start learning the truth. The Elder Board met at 7 the next morning in the conference room, 7 men who'd been with me since the beginning. Marcus Webb sat at the head of the table, 58, silver hair, 30 years in ministry, my mentor, the man who'd ordained me. Jennifer Park stood at the whiteboard with her legal pad and the evidence organized in manila folders. Gentlemen, I said, standing at the other end of the table, I'm going to tell you something that will either destroy this church or define it. I told them everything, the affair, the pregnancy, the security footage, Hannah's sketch pad sitting in my office with its timeline of betrayal documented in charcoal. When I finished, silence filled the room like smoke. Marcus broke it first. How long have you known? 24 hours. And Kyle, does he know you know? Not yet. Jennifer pulled out the timestamp sheet, laid it flat on the conference table. 67 documented instances of both vehicles in the lot simultaneously. Late night, pattern corresponds with Daniel's mission trips and hospital visits. Elder Tom Harrison, our finance chair, leaned forward. In the church building? They were using our facility for... Yes, Jennifer said. That's not just adultery, Marcus said quietly. That's misuse of church property, moral conduct violation, conflict of interest if she promoted him. She did, Jennifer confirmed. 3 times in 18 months, salary increased 42%, all signed by Rebecca as Director of Women's Ministry with HR authority. Another silence. Heavier this time. We have to vote, Marcus said finally. Keep this contained until after Christmas. Manage it quietly, protect the church's reputation. Or tell the truth now and let the chips fall. There's a third option, Elder James offered. Daniel steps down, takes the fall quietly. We say it's health reasons or burnout. Kyle and Rebecca leave, clean slate. I felt my jaw tighten. No, Marcus said before I could speak. Daniel didn't break covenant. He's not taking the fall for their choices. But the optics... Damn the optics, Marcus said, voice sharp. We either stand for truth or we stand for image. We don't get both. Jennifer cleared her throat. Legally, the church is exposed if we knew about staff misconduct and didn't act. If we cover this up and it comes out later, and it will come out, we're liable. Knowingly retaining employees in violation of moral conduct clauses opens us to lawsuits. So we have to fire Kyle, Tom said. And accept Rebecca's resignation, Jennifer added. She'll volunteer it once she understands the alternative. Marcus looked at me. Daniel, what do you want? I thought about Hannah's sketch pad, about my daughter watching her mother destroy their family and trying desperately to warn me through art, about 67 nights of betrayal in the building we dedicated to God's glory. I want the truth, I said. Not to punish them, not for revenge, but because my daughter is watching. Because 3,000 people trust me to lead with integrity. Because if I cover this up to protect the institution, I'm no better than my father was. Silence. Then Marcus nodded. We vote, all in favor of full transparency, investigating the misconduct, accepting resignations, and informing the congregation. Say aye. 7 voices. Aye. Unanimous. Motion carries, Marcus said. Jennifer, draft the documents. I'll speak with Kyle this afternoon. Daniel, you need to tell Rebecca she has 24 hours to resign voluntarily, or we proceed with termination for cause. The meeting ended. The wheels of institutional justice started turning. I found Kyle in the sanctuary that afternoon. He was alone, rehearsing for Wednesday night worship. His voice filled the empty space, singing one of the songs from the album, the one dedicated to R. I stood in the back and listened. The acoustics in the sanctuary were perfect. We'd spent $200,000 on sound engineering. Every note was crystal clear. When the song ended, I walked down the center aisle. My footsteps echoed. Kyle turned, saw me, smiled. "Hey, Pastor, what did you think? Now, I'm trying a new arrangement for... We need to talk." His smile faltered. "Sure. What's up? How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" The color drained from his face. What? Daniel, don't lie to me." I kept walking until I was standing at the stage edge, looking up at him. "I know everything. The timestamps, the pregnancy, the album dedication, all of it." He set down his guitar, stepped back. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay. I'm sorry you found out like this. We were going to tell you. Rebecca and I, we were planning to what? Run away together? Start over in Oregon and pretend you didn't destroy a family? It's not like that." He sat on the stage edge, running his hands through his hair. "Daniel, I didn't plan this. Neither did Rebecca. It just happened. 18 months doesn't just happen, Kyle. 67 nights in this building doesn't just happen. You made choices. So did you," he said, looking up at me. "You chose this church over her, over your family, every mission trip, every late-night board meeting, every hospital visit when you could have been home. You chose ministry over your wife." The words hit like fists. "That doesn't justify adultery." "No," he agreed, "but it explains it. Rebecca was lonely. She needed someone who actually saw her as more than the pastor's wife. I gave her that. I gave her passion and attention and a baby that's not her husband's." He flinched. "Yes, and that. We're going to raise the child together. We're getting married." I gripped the pulpit Bible that was sitting on the front row pew. My grandfather's Bible. The leather warm from sitting in the sun through the stained glass. I held it to keep my hands from shaking. "You used religious language to justify sin," I said. "You used my church, this sanctuary, to commit adultery. And now, you're standing here telling me I'm the problem? I'm not saying you're the problem. I'm saying you were absent, physically present but emotionally gone. And Rebecca needed..." "Stop." My voice came out harder than intended. "Stop making this about me. You're a 33-year-old man who seduced a married woman. Own it." He stood up. "Seduced? She came to me, Daniel. That night during the bridge collapse memorial, she was crying in the sanctuary. 2 a.m. I was there working on the song. She told me she felt invisible in her own marriage, that you looked at her but didn't see her anymore. We prayed together. And then you kissed her." "She kissed me," he corrected. "But yeah, we kissed, and it felt right. Like God was giving us both permission to finally be happy." I looked at him. This man I'd hired, mentored, trusted with our worship ministry, and saw a stranger. "God doesn't give permission for adultery, Kyle. Doesn't he?" Kyle's voice took on that spiritual manipulation tone I'd heard from false teachers. "Doesn't he want us to be whole, to be loved, to experience passion? Maybe this is his grace too. Maybe he brought Rebecca and me together because you weren't the right person for her anymore." The Bible in my hands felt heavy, solid, an anchor. "Pack your things," I said quietly. "You're done here. You can't fire me." "I can. Moral conduct clause. It's in your contract, 24 hours. Then security escorts you off campus." I turned and walked back up the aisle. Behind me, Kyle called out, "You married your calling, Daniel. Rebecca just found someone who chose her instead." I didn't respond, didn't turn around. Just kept walking until I was outside in the late afternoon sun, breathing hard, hands still gripping the Bible. David Chen found me in my office an hour later. He knocked softly, came in without waiting for an answer, and set something on my desk. A burgundy leather journal, gold-edged pages, ribbon bookmark. "What's this?" "Rebecca's prayer journal," he said. "She left it in the women's ministry office. I found it yesterday when I was looking for the budget files." I stared at it, didn't touch it. "You should read it," David said gently. "Not to hurt yourself, but to understand." After he left, I opened the journal. The leather smelled like her perfume, vanilla, faint but unmistakable. The scent had seeped into the pages over months of handling. The pages crinkled like old parchment when I turned them. Each entry dated, 18 months of her inner thoughts. I started reading. May 4th, 2023. Thank you, God, for sending Kyle into my life. Last night in the sanctuary felt like the first time I'd truly been seen in years. Is this wrong? It doesn't feel wrong. It feels like an answer to prayers I've been too afraid to pray. June 12th, 2023. Daniel left for Guatemala today. 6 days. I know Kyle and I will see each other. I know we'll be together. I should feel guilty. Instead, I feel alive. August 30th, 2023. We recorded track 7 today. Kyle dedicated it to me in the liner notes. For he wrote, our inside joke, our testimony. 3,000 people will buy this album and never know it's really about us. About love that shouldn't exist, but does. October 15th, 2023. I'm pregnant. Took the test 3 times. All positive. It's Kyle's. Daniel and I haven't been intimate in 7 months. I should be terrified. I'm not. I'm hopeful. Maybe this is God's grace too. Maybe He's giving me the family I was supposed to have all along, page after page, justifying, spiritualizing, making God complicit in adultery. The last entry was dated 2 weeks ago, September 22nd, 2024. Kyle and I talked about telling Daniel this week. I'm scared but also relieved. Living this double life is exhausting. I want to be free. I want to start over with someone who actually sees me, who chooses me, who makes me feel like a woman instead of just a role. Daniel will understand eventually. This is God's grace too. I closed the journal. She'd made God her accomplice. Used prayer language to bless betrayal. Transformed adultery into spiritual journey. The intimate nature of it, reading her private thoughts. Seeing how she'd convinced herself this was righteous. Hurt worse than the affair itself. I sat there in the darkness of my office, the journal still in my hands, and felt the full weight of loss settle into my chest. The next day, David came back, this time with the worship album. Have you actually looked at this? He asked, holding up the CD. Listened to it? Not looked. He opened the jewel case. The plastic cracked with that distinctive snap. Pulled out the liner notes, the booklet that came with the CD. Started reading. Track listings, production credits, thank yous to the congregation. He flipped to the last page. And here, dedication section. He read aloud. For you showed me that sometimes God's gifts come in unexpected forms. You are the inspiration behind every word of track 7. This is our testimony. This is our worship. Love, K. I took the booklet from him, read it myself. The words were right there in print, public, published, distributed. David, I said slowly, we released this album 6 months ago. Easter Sunday, he confirmed. Big celebration. You preached on resurrection. We sold 3,000 copies, I finished. 3,000 people bought this album. They've been listening to his love letter to my wife, thinking it was worship music. David nodded grimly. I put the CD in my computer, clicked to track 7. Kyle's voice filled the office. In the darkness, you found me. When I was lost, you saw me. This forbidden fire burns with holy desire. Your grace sets me free. The lyrics continued, double meanings everywhere. Forbidden fire. Secret places where we meet. Love that shouldn't be, but is. We'd played this in church, during worship services. While Rebecca sat in the front row and Kyle led from the stage, and I had no idea they were singing about their affair to our entire congregation. I need you to do something, I said to David. Anything. Call a special service. This Sunday, I'm telling the congregation. Daniel, are you sure? Maybe we should wait until after. No more waiting, no more protecting the image. Truth first. If you've ever felt like the last person to know what everyone else could see, if you've been the one working hard while your world fell apart behind your back, just type invisible in the comments. You're not alone. I see you. That night, Hannah came to me. She found me in the living room, holding the worship album, reading the dedication over and over. Mom called, she said. She wants to meet with me tomorrow, talk about the future. Do you want to see her? Hannah sat next to me on the couch, 14 years old. Charcoal smudges still on her hands from drawing. I want to tell her what I think of her. Hannah? No, Dad. I've been quiet for months, drawing my feelings instead of saying them. I'm done being quiet. The next afternoon, I drove Hannah to a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Rebecca was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. I stayed by the door, close enough if Hannah needed me, far enough to let them talk. Hannah sat down across from her mother, placed her sketch pad on the table between them. "I want to show you something," Hannah said. She opened to the first drawing. March 15th. Mom and Kyle on stage. "I drew this 6 months ago," Hannah said, her voice steady. "Remember, I showed it to you, asked if it was good. You said, 'That's nice, honey,' like you didn't even see what I'd captured." She flipped to the next page, and the next. All 15 drawings, the timeline of betrayal documented in charcoal. Rebecca's face went pale. "I was giving you a chance to stop," Hannah continued, "to choose us. I thought if you knew I noticed, you'd end it. You'd pick Dad. You'd pick me." "Hannah, sweetheart." "Don't." Hannah's voice hardened. "Don't sweetheart me. You made your choice. You chose Kyle. You chose to get pregnant with his baby. You chose to destroy our family. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Hannah turned to the last page, the shattered wedding photo. "I'm 14 years old, and I have more integrity than you do. Dad taught me that character is what you do when nobody's watching. What did you teach me? How to lie. How to betray people who love you?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought—" "You thought about yourself," Hannah said. "That's all you thought about. Your feelings, your needs, your passion. Did you ever think about me? About what this would do to me?" Silence. Hannah stood up, picked up her sketch pad. "I came here because I wanted you to know something," she said. "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I'm not going to let your choices destroy who I am. Dad taught me that too. Grace isn't excusing sin. It's choosing not to let someone else's sin poison you." She turned and walked back to me. Rebecca sat at the table, shoulders shaking, crying into her hands. We left her there. In the car, Hannah was silent for a long time. Then, "I feel lighter," she said, "like I've been carrying her guilt, and I finally put it down." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you," I said. "The shepherd's first flock is his family," she quoted back to me. "You told me that. You're getting it right now, Dad." The following Sunday, Thanksgiving weekend, I stood on that stage alone. The tradition at Grace Community was for pastoral families to give testimony together during Thanksgiving service, share what they were grateful for, model family unity. 3,500 people filled the sanctuary, expecting me, Rebecca, and Hannah to stand together and talk about blessings. Instead, I stood alone. Marcus Webb had tried to talk me out of this. "Daniel, maybe just cancel the family testimony this year. Preach on gratitude, move past it." But moving past meant covering up, and I was done covering up. I held my grandfather's Bible, didn't open it, just gripped it for strength. The leather creaked in the silence. "We stand before God and witnesses," I began. "That's what I preached about 8 weeks ago. Accountability, public covenant, marriage as something made visible because love needs witnesses when it gets hard." The congregation shifted, sensing something wrong. I stood here and told you about faithfulness, about staying, about covenant. I paused, breathed. I had no idea that while I was preaching those words, my marriage was already over. You could hear 3,000 people collectively hold their breath. "Rebecca and I are separating," I said. "She's been having an affair with Kyle Foster for 18 months. She's pregnant with his child. They're leaving Grace Community. They're leaving me. And I'm standing here telling you this because my 14-year-old daughter taught me that truth is more important than image." Silence. Complete silence. "I failed," I continued, voice breaking. "I was so busy building this church that I stopped building my marriage. I prioritized ministry over my family, and that failure created space for betrayal." Tears came. I didn't stop them. "My family is broken," I told them, 3,500 witnesses. "But God is still good." I stood there, alone, vulnerable, shattered. Then Marcus Webb stood up in the front row, then the whole front row, then the second row, then the entire congregation, all of them, standing, not applauding, not cheering, just standing with me in solidarity, tears streaming down faces, hands raised, silent support. "Thank you," I whispered. We stood there together, me on stage, them in the pews, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, not alone. When the service ended, people didn't leave. They came forward, hugged me, cried with me, told me their own stories of betrayal and survival. Hannah found me backstage an hour later, still surrounded by people. "You did it, Dad," she said. "You told the truth." "We did it," I corrected. "We're doing this together." That night, the elder board met again. Emergency session. Jennifer laid out the documents, legal separation filing for California, Kyle's termination letter for moral conduct violation, Rebecca's resignation, acceptance. The elder board resolution was printed on cream cardstock with the embossed church seal. Blue ink signature lines for all 7 board members. Red wax seal at the bottom. One by one, they signed. Marcus signed last. He took the wax seal, old-fashioned but official, and pressed it into the warm wax. It made a soft crack as the seal set. "Kyle Brandon Foster is terminated effective immediately," Marcus read from the document. "Rebecca Lynn Matthews has resigned all ministry positions. The board accepts both actions with regret, but conviction that truth serves God's people better than image." He looked at me. "You good with this?" I nodded. The truth sets free, even when it costs everything. The seal was final, the evidence documented, the consequences real. Christmas was 4 weeks away. The legal machinery moved quickly once the decision was made. Jennifer filed the separation papers on Monday morning. California required a 6-month waiting period before divorce could be finalized. But the clock started ticking. Division of assets, custody arrangements for Hannah, financial support structure. Kyle's termination was effective immediately. Security escorted him off campus Tuesday afternoon. He went quietly. No scene, no final statement. Just packed his office in cardboard boxes and left through the back entrance. Rebecca resigned via email Wednesday morning. Short. Professional. After prayerful consideration, I'm resigning all positions at Grace Community effective immediately. I wish the church continued blessing. No apology, no acknowledgement of harm, just corporate language and distance. By Thursday, they were both gone. The congregation knew. Social media knew. By Friday, the local Christian radio station had picked up the story. Megachurch pastor's marriage ends amid staff affair. The headline was gentler than it could have been, but it still stung. I stayed off social media, stopped reading the comments, focused on the only thing that mattered, shepherding the people who remained. Sunday, December 1st, I stood in the pulpit again. The sanctuary was packed, 4,000 people, more than usual. Some came out of curiosity, some came out of concern. Some came because they'd been through this themselves and wanted to witness what happened when a leader chose truth over image. I held my grandfather's Bible, the worn leather, the tissue pages, my anchor through every storm. When shepherds fall, I began. That's the sermon title today. And before you wonder if I'm talking about someone else, let me be clear, I'm talking about me. The congregation shifted, alert, listening. 2 weeks ago, I stood here and told you my marriage was broken. Today, I want to tell you how I broke it. I set the Bible down on the pulpit, gripped the edges of the wood. I prioritized this building over my home. I prioritized your needs over my wife's needs. I worked 70-hour weeks and told myself it was for God's kingdom, when really it was because ministry success was easier than marriage intimacy. Silence. People leaning forward. The Bible says if a man can't manage his own household, he shouldn't lead God's church. 1 Timothy 3:5. I've known that verse since seminary. I preached it at ordination services, and I violated it every time I chose a hospital visit over a date night, every time I took a mission trip instead of a vacation with my family, every time I said yes to you and no to them. I picked up the worship album, the CD we'd celebrated 6 months ago. Some of you bought this, I said, holding it up. His grace sufficient, beautiful worship, anointed songs, and I told you from this pulpit that it was a testimony to what's possible when we work together in ministry. I paused. I was right. It was a testimony, just not the testimony I thought. I read the dedication aloud, Kyle's words to Rebecca, masked as spiritual language, hidden in plain sight. 3,000 of you listened to this, bought it for your families, played it in your cars, worshipped along with it, never knowing you were hearing a confession of adultery disguised as praise music. Some people gasped, others nodded. They'd already figured it out. I'm not telling you this to shame anyone, I continued. I'm telling you because secrets kill, because image management is spiritual cancer, because the moment we care more about looking good than being honest, we've lost our way. I set the CD down. I need to step back, I said, not because I'm running, not because I'm ashamed, but because the shepherd's first flock is his family. My daughter needs her father, and I need time to learn how to be present instead of just productive. The announcement rippled through the crowd. I'm taking a 3-month sabbatical starting January 1st. Marcus Webb will serve as interim senior pastor. I'll still be around, still part of this church, but my primary calling for the next 3 months is being Hannah's dad. I looked out at the sea of faces, saw tears, saw understanding, saw grace I didn't deserve. If you need permission to prioritize your family, I said, I'm giving it to you. If you need permission to tell the truth, even when it costs you, I'm giving it to you. If you need permission to break instead of pretending you're whole, I'm giving it to you. My voice cracked. God doesn't need our performance. He wants our honesty. When I finished, the congregation didn't just stand. They surged forward. Hundreds of people, filling the altar, praying, crying, confessing their own secrets, their own broken families, their own desperate attempts to look put together while falling apart inside. I stood in the middle of it all and felt the weight of pretense finally lift. After service, I found my mother waiting in my office. Ruth Matthews, 67 years old, retired nurse. The woman who'd raised me after my father's pastoral scandal destroyed our family when I was 8. She was sitting in my chair, holding a photo I kept in my desk drawer. My father, young, in clerical robes, before the affair, before the cover-up, before the church split and our family shattered. I haven't seen this picture in years, she said quietly. I sat across from her. Why are you here, Mom? Because I've watched you walk through the same valley your father did, she said, and I wanted to make sure you came out the other side differently. She set the photo down. Your father had an affair when you were 7, she said. Lasted 2 years, with the choir director. I found out when you did, when someone left an anonymous letter on our doorstep. I knew this story, lived through it, but I'd never heard her tell it like this. The elders gave him a choice, she continued. Confess publicly and face consequences, or resign quietly and we'd all pretend it was health issues. He chose the second option. I remember, I said. The resignation destroyed him, Ruth said. Not the affair, the hiding. The shame ate him alive. He spent 20 years drinking himself to death because he couldn't face what he'd done, couldn't accept grace because he'd never told the truth. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much grief. You chose different, Daniel. When you stood on that stage Thanksgiving Sunday and told 3,000 people your marriage was broken, you broke the cycle. Tears came, mine and hers. That baby Rebecca's carrying, Ruth said, innocent, not responsible for the parents' choices. You could be bitter, refuse any connection, make that child pay for what Kyle and Rebecca did. I've thought about it, I admitted. Of course you have. You're human. She reached across the desk and took my hand. But you're also your grandfather's grandson. You know what grace looks like. Not approval, not excusing sin, but refusing to punish innocence. I'm setting up a trust fund, I said, for the baby, education, medical, whatever they need, anonymous, through Jennifer's firm. They'll never know it came from me. Ruth smiled through tears. That's the difference. Your father ran from his failure. You're running toward redemption. The shepherd's first flock is his family. You're finally getting that right. We sat in that office, 2 generations of pastoral family trauma, and cried together. What happens now? I asked. You heal, she said simply. You let Hannah see that broken men can still be good fathers. You let your congregation see that leaders can fail and still lead, because leadership isn't perfection, it's honesty. And you let yourself off the hook for not being able to save a marriage that one partner didn't want saved. She stood, hugged me, left me with the photo of my father. I looked at his young face, the idealism, the confidence, the certainty that he'd never fail like the men he criticized. I'm sorry, Dad, I whispered. I'm sorry you never got to tell the truth. I'm sorry shame killed you. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Then I put the photo back in the drawer and closed it. Some cycles end, some patterns break, some sons choose different paths than their fathers. The congregational vote happened 2 weeks later. The bylaws required it after any major staff change involving senior leadership family members. The question was simple. Do you have confidence in Daniel Matthews continuing as senior pastor? I didn't campaign, didn't defend myself. Just let the vote happen. 89% voted yes, 11% abstained or voted no. Mostly people who thought I should have resigned immediately, taken the fall, protected the church's image. But 89% said, we trust you. We believe truth matters more than appearance. Stay. Jennifer delivered the results personally. Overwhelming confidence, she said. The board is satisfied. The congregation is satisfied. Now you need to satisfy yourself that you're allowed to stay. Christmas approached like a deadline I wasn't ready for. Hannah asked if I was going to preach Christmas Eve. 3 services, 6,000 total people, 50,000 watching the broadcast. I don't know if I can, I admitted. Standing up there, talking about hope and grace when I'm still bleeding? Then preach about bleeding, she said. Preach about how hope is real, even when you're broken. About how grace doesn't wait until you're healed to show up. She was 14, saying things that took me 41 years to learn. Will you lead worship? I asked. What? Kyle's gone. We need a worship leader for Christmas Eve. And you've got the voice, the heart. You've been on youth worship team for 2 years. I trust you. Fear flashed across her face. Then something else. Determination. Okay, she said. We'll do it together. You preach. I'll lead worship. Both of us broken, both of us honest, both of us showing up anyway. December 24th arrived. The sanctuary was decorated. Poinsettias everywhere. White lights strung across the ceiling. The massive Christmas tree on stage. Everything beautiful. Everything festive. Everything a stark contrast to the grief I was carrying. I stood backstage in my study, putting on my suit jacket, trying to steady my breathing. A knock. Hannah came in. She was wearing her mother's Christmas dress from last year. Simple, elegant. Her own small act of reclaiming what had been stolen. You ready? She asked. No, I admitted, but I'm going anyway. We walked to the stage entrance together, could hear the sanctuary filling. Thousands of people, Christmas Eve, expecting joy and celebration and good news. What are you going to preach? Hannah asked. Real grace, I said. The kind that shows up in devastation. The kind that doesn't wait for you to be cleaned up first. The music cue sounded. Time to start. Hannah squeezed my hand. Character is what you do when nobody's watching, Dad. Grandma Ruth taught me that. She's watching now. We won't let her down. She walked out on stage, alone, 14 years old, stood at the microphone. Good evening, she said, voice steady. My name is Hannah Matthews. Some of you know me as Pastor Daniel's daughter. Some of you know my family has been through something hard this year, something that broke us open. The sanctuary went quiet, 6,000 people listening. Tonight I want to lead you in worship, she continued. Not because I have it all together, but because worship isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. So let's be honest together. She started singing. Silent Night, simple, a cappella at first. Then the musicians joined in. Her voice filled the sanctuary, pure, unpolished, real. I stood in the wings and cried. After worship, I walked out. Stood at the pulpit, my grandfather's Bible in my hands. We stand before God and witnesses, I began. I've said those words a lot this year, usually talking about marriage, about covenant, about staying when it's hard. I paused, breathed. Tonight I want to talk about what happens when covenant breaks, when staying is impossible, when the person you thought would never leave, leaves. I told them about the past 3 months, not all the details. Hannah deserved privacy, but the shape of it, the affair, the pregnancy, the choice to tell the truth instead of protecting image. Christmas is about God showing up in the mess, I said. Not after the mess is cleaned up, not once we've got our act together, but right in the middle of it, a baby born in a barn because there was no room anywhere else. That's the scandal of Christmas. God doesn't wait for perfect conditions. I looked out at the congregation, saw people crying, saw people nodding, saw people who'd lived this same story with different details. So, if you're broken tonight, I said, welcome, you're in the right place. If your family looks nothing like the Christmas cards, welcome. If you're not sure how you're going to make it through the next year, welcome. Christmas isn't about having it all together. It's about God meeting us in our inability to hold it together. After the sermon, we lit the Christ candle. The tradition was for pastoral families to light it together. Hannah and I stood at the altar, the massive white pillar candle between us. 6,000 people watching, 50,000 on broadcast. I held the lighter, my hand shook. Hannah put her hands over mine, steadying me. Together, we lit the candle. The flame caught, flickered, grew steady. "We stand before God and witnesses," I whispered. Hannah whispered with me. "We stand before God and witnesses. Not a marriage vow anymore. Something different. Father and daughter. Broken but together. Honest instead of perfect." The candle burned between us. 6,000 people stood, not applauding, not cheering, just standing in solidarity. Witnesses to redemption. The flame flickered in the silence. Our joined hands trembled, both of us crying, but we were standing, and that was enough. Daniel and Hannah redefined what family means that Christmas. Not who you're born to, but who shows up when everything falls apart. If you've built your own chosen family through the hardest seasons, whether that's friends who became siblings, mentors who became parents, or communities that became home, tell me about them in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that faith survives even when families break, subscribe. I tell stories about truth tested in fire. I'll see you in the next one. The service ended. People filed out slowly. Many stopped to hug us, to tell their own stories, to say thank you for the permission to be broken in public. Caleb, my 18-year-old son from my first brief marriage, found us backstage. He'd driven down from college for Christmas Eve, stood there in his Northwestern hoodie, tears in his eyes. "I'm proud of you both," he said. Pulled us into a hug. For standing up there, for telling the truth, for not hiding. The three of us stood there, my 2 kids, both from broken marriages, both choosing to show up anyway. Later that night, after the last service ended and the sanctuary emptied, I walked back inside alone. The Christmas tree lights still glowed, the candle still burned on the altar. The sanctuary was silent except for the faint hum of heating vents. I sat in the front row, looked at the pulpit where I'd preached thousands of sermons, the stage where Kyle had led worship while sleeping with my wife, the altar where Hannah had just led 6,000 people in honest worship. All of it sacred, all of it broken, all of it somehow still standing. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer. "Rebecca and Kyle were married this afternoon. Small ceremony in Portland. They're staying in Oregon. Baby due in June. Thought you should know." I stared at the message, felt nothing. No rage, no grief, just acknowledgement. They'd made their choice, built their new life. I couldn't stop them, couldn't change them, could only control what I did next. I texted back, "Thanks for telling me. I'll make sure the trust fund is set up before the baby arrives. Every child deserves a future." Jennifer, "That's grace, Daniel. Real grace." I stood, walked to the altar, touched the Christ candle, still warm, still burning. "First, do no harm," I whispered, "even when harm was done to you, especially then." I thought about my father, about the cycle of shame that killed him, about the choice to hide versus the choice to heal. I thought about Hannah, about her charcoal drawings documenting our family's fracture, about her voice leading worship tonight with trembling courage. I thought about Ruth, about breaking generational patterns, about being the son who chose differently. And I thought about that baby, the one Rebecca was carrying, the one Kyle would raise, the one who had no say in any of this. "You'll be okay," I whispered to a child who couldn't hear me. "You didn't ask for this, didn't choose these parents, didn't earn this complicated beginning, but you'll have what you need: education, healthcare, a chance. Because someone you'll never meet decided that innocence doesn't deserve punishment." The candle flickered. Outside, Christmas Eve snow had started falling, rare for Riverside. A gift. I walked to the exit, turned back one last time. The sanctuary looked different now. Not smaller, not diminished, just honest. A place where broken people gathered to worship a God who specialized in redemption, where leaders admitted failure, where 14-year-olds led worship, where truth mattered more than image. I touched the doorframe on my way out. A blessing, a benediction. "We stand before God and witnesses," I said one more time. And sometimes that's the only thing keeping us standing. The door closed behind me with a soft click. The candle burned on through the night. And somewhere in that flame, in the choosing to show up broken, in the refusing to hide, in the standing before witnesses with empty hands and honest hearts, grace was happening. Not the grace that excuses, the grace that redeems, the kind that shows up in mangers and sanctuaries and shattered families. The kind that says, you're broken, yes, but you're not done. Come morning, we'd start again. Hannah and I, Ruth watching over us. Caleb home from college. A congregation learning that honesty beats performance. And me, 41 years old, divorced, publicly failed, standing in the ruins of everything I'd built, learning that the shepherd's first flock really is his family, finally getting it right,